Welcome back. Today's explainer is a fascinating deep dive into a text that, honestly, we rarely look at from a purely mechanical perspective. We are literally opening up a highly specific, step-by-step, 3,000-year-old operating manual. It is a set of instructions so precise, so demanding, that it's going to completely reframe how you think about ancient practices.
You know, it's so easy to imagine ancient ceremonies as these abstract, mystical gatherings, right? Vague chanting, clouds of smoke everywhere. But our guiding question today cuts right through that. How did an ancient altar ritual actually work? Because it wasn't abstract at all. It was a highly physical, exact, and rigorous science. When you consider the sheer density of this source material, this is Exodus chapter 29, specifically detailing the consecration of the priests, Aaron and his sons. It doesn't read like poetry, and it certainly isn't philosophy. It reads exactly like a dense, high-stakes recipe. Every single detail, every measurement, and every physical action is absolutely critical to the success of the operation. To make sense of this procedure, we're going to follow the structure of the text itself. We'll start with the ancient instruction manual, move into washing in holy garments, look at the blood sacrifices, then the wave and fire offerings, and finally, daily altar maintenance.
Okay, Section 1, the Ancient Instruction Manual, Gathering the Ingredients.
The overarching goal of this whole procedure is explicitly stated. Consecrate Aaron and his sons so they can serve as priests. And, like any complex operation, before you can do the work, you've got to gather your materials. The text right away lists the precise ingredients required, all brought in a single basket to the entrance of the tent of meeting. You need 1 bull and 2 rams, but wait, not just any animals, they have to be completely without blemish. Talk about strict quality control. Then you have a very specific carbohydrate profile: unleavened bread, unleavened cakes mixed with oil, and unleavened wafers smeared with oil. Plus, the manual insists these must be made of fine wheat flour. There is absolutely zero room for substitution here.
Moving on to Section 2, Washing and Holy Garments, the Preparation.
So once the materials are gathered at the entrance of the tent, the physical actions kick off. This brings us to prepping the personnel. The manual lays out this highly structured dressing sequence. It starts with the most basic, fundamental act, washing Aaron and his sons with water. But from there, it rapidly layers on weight and significance. You put on the coat, the robe of the ephod itself, and the breastpiece, tying it all together with a skillfully woven band. Then comes the headwear, the turban topped with the holy crown. Finally, you take the anointing oil and physically pour it over his head. It's an amazing illustration of the transition from just an ordinary guy to a fully equipped, sacred functionary, literally weighed down by the tools of his office.
Section 3, the Blood Sacrifices, a Visceral Procedure.
They are definitely going to need those heavy, sacred garments, because we are now transitioning into a highly sensory and, frankly, highly visceral phase. Let's break down the sequential mechanics of the very first sacrifice. Aaron and his sons must physically lay their hands on the head of the bull before it is killed right at the tent entrance. Then the handling of the blood is dictated with absolute precision. You don't just splash it around, you take part of the blood and specifically apply it to the horns of the altar using your finger. The rest of the blood is then completely poured out at the base of the altar. Notice that stark contrast in physical actions, a highly targeted application followed by a total pouring out. Now, if you thought the instructions for the bull were specific, notice how this builds with the rams. The physical actions escalate into this bizarre specificity, especially when we get to the second ram, which is known as the ram of ordination. Just listen to this astonishing quote straight from the manual. You kill the ram, take its blood, and apply it to the tip of the right ear of Aaron, and on the tips of the right ears of his sons, and on the thumbs of their right hands, and on the great toes of their right feet. Ear tip, thumb, big toe, right side only. I mean, that is an incredibly hyper-specific physical requirement. The blood is then thrown against the sides of the altar, and a mixture of that altar blood and anointing oil is sprinkled directly onto the priests and their new garments to make them holy.
It becomes abundantly clear that literally no part of this process is left to chance. There are strict, contrasting rules governing different phases of the ritual. Just listen to how these two compare. For the bull, which is designated as a sin offering, its flesh, skin, and even its dung have to be taken and burned with fire completely outside the camp. But for the ram of ordination, its flesh is boiled in a holy place and must be physically eaten by Aaron and his sons right at the entrance of the tent, along with the bread from the basket. Outsiders cannot eat it. And if any of it is left over by morning, it gets burned. Total utilization, strictly controlled environments.
Section 4,
Wave and fire offerings, a pleasing aroma.
Shifting our focus from the handling of the blood and flesh to the highly choreographed handling of the animal's internal organs and those baked breads, the text outlines something called a wave offering. Here is exactly how the manual defines the physical action. You take the fat from the ram, the fat tail, the fat covering the entrails, the lobe of the liver, the 2 kidneys, the right thigh, and one of each type of unleavened bread from that basket we talked about earlier. You place all of this heavy material directly onto the open palms of Aaron and his sons. They must physically wave them before the Lord. Only after that specific movement is completed do you take the items back from their hands and burn them on the altar. The text repeatedly states that burning these specific elements creates a pleasing aroma, a food offering to the Lord.
And finally, Section 5, Daily Altar Maintenance, the Long-Term Commitment.
Now, if you're thinking that completing this exhausting, messy sequence means the job is done, well, think again. This operating manual doesn't just cover a one-off event. It actually dictates an ongoing, incredibly demanding maintenance schedule. Consider the number 7. The text commands, "Through 7 days shall you ordain them." Every single day for a full week, they had to offer a bull as a sin offering to make atonement for the altar, purify it, and anoint it. You don't just do this massive ritual once. You have to repeat the exact sequence 7 times to fully prime the system.
And once that intense 7-day consecration is finally over, the work has barely even begun. The altar requires a permanent, daily fuel source. 2. That is the number of year-old lambs that must be offered day by day, regularly, forever. 1 lamb is offered in the morning, and the other lamb is offered at twilight. And with each lamb, they have to offer a 10th measure of fine flour mingled with beaten oil and a 1/4 of a hin of wine for a drink offering. Morning and twilight, every single day, generation after generation.
So the absolutely crucial point here is why? Why the fine wheat flour, the heavy layered garments, the blood on the right earlobe, the waving of kidneys on the palms of hands, the relentless daily burning of lambs? Why undergo this incredibly taxing operating manual? Well, the text answers this directly right at the very end. The ultimate purpose driving all of these highly structured, visceral steps is connection.
The manual wraps up with this incredibly powerful statement regarding the people of Israel. "I will dwell among the people of Israel and will be their God, and they shall know that I am the Lord their God, who brought them out of the land of Egypt, that I might dwell among them." It's wild to think about. All of this unbelievable precision, all of these complex, demanding, and honestly messy mechanics were ultimately engineered to build an operational space for a profound, literal, divine connection. It really leaves you with a provocative thought. What lengths would you go to in order to build and maintain a connection like that? Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer. I'll see you next time.